Hello, I am Master Mario 548. The Nostalgia Critic has certainly given us a lot of entertainment over the years. Whether it's in his Nostalgia Critic form or just anything else like Disney December, he's given us a lot of things to look forward to. But the Nostalgia Critic is what we usually look forward to. Doug has had some pretty good reviews over the years. He's had his ups and he's had his downs. And for the most part, most of them have been pretty good. Even though the style of his reviews has changed a little, they are still pretty good. But there are still some reviews I've been waiting to see for a long time, just for a long time, and he still hasn't done them. And I just kind of wonder if, hoping he's ever going to do them, because these are just reviews I want to see him trash or just go and praise beyond belief. So these are going to be my top 12, because I like to go 2 steps beyond, of my top 12 Nostalgia Critic reviews I want to see. Just most of them are going to be just movies, but they will have a few shows as well. So sit back, relax, and we'll look at the top 12 Nostalgia Critic reviews I want to see. Number 12, Crybaby Lane. This is a movie that Doug has probably never heard of, because it aired on Nickelodeon quite a few years after he stopped watching it. But I think it could make an interesting review. Crybaby Lane was a movie that aired around Halloween 2000, and supposedly it was scary enough for children that it never aired again. It only aired that once around 2000 and was never seen again. It became a lost film. It even became sort of a myth. But years after, it actually went and aired on Teen Next, the 90s, all that, and people saw it again for the first time in years. And I guess it had some scary stuff in it for little children, but I've seen scarier than this. I mean, I've heard Disney's Don't Look Under the Bed is scarier than this is, and I've seen images of it, and yeah, it does look scarier. I mean, this does have some, I guess, okay scary images, but it isn't that bad. I mean, it isn't going to have them being crawling into your bed all scared or anything. I really don't remember this that much from a child. I do sort of remember it, but not that much. I usually remember the Are You Afraid of the Dark, the final episode, a lot more than this one. But for what it was okay. The acting was okay. The script was okay. It's just, I don't really see why it was seen as so scary, because apparently it got a lot of complaints by parents, but some other people say it might have been because the dad wasn't really that good of a father. I mean, he didn't beat them or anything, but he didn't really care that they went and snuck out after midnight or anything, and he thought he was just a bad role model and things like that. But Crybaby Lane, it's just, I really don't know what to say about it. It's really not that scary, because there are just a lot other scarier things out there for children. And I can see Doug pointing out a lot of things in this type of review, and he might be kind of picky towards it because he didn't grow up with it. He didn't see it when he was a kid or anything, so you don't go around saying, you can't go and hate on this. It's just, I think he would be probably pretty harsh on it just because he's probably never seen it. But Crybaby Lane, just, I like to see a review on it because he needs to do more Nickelodeon stuff and definitely more modern Nickelodeon stuff. Even though this isn't modern, but I guess for him it might be modern. So Crybaby Lane. Number 11, Mac and Me. I'm gonna be truthful. I really don't know much about this film. I don't think I've ever seen it from all the way from the beginning to the end. So I guess I really shouldn't be talking about it. But from what I saw, it just looks terrible. And a lot of people requested this movie, and I can definitely see why. It's just obvious it was trying to go and make money off E.T. at the time, even though E.T. was probably about, 5 or 6 years old when this film came out. So E.T. was sort of old news by then, even though it was still popular, but they couldn't rip on something more modern at the time. I've seen clips of it on YouTube. I mean, one of the scenes was when all these kids were in McDonald's and they spent a lot of time there. It was pretty obvious. It was just McDonald's paid them for the scene, and it was just all these kids dancing around, and the alien, I think, was disguised as a kid or something. I really don't remember, but it was really stupid, and it has nothing to do with this, but I kind of find it funny that all the kids that were there were skinny. I mean, yeah, this was back in the 80s when more kids were skinny, but come on, every kid at the McDonald's? I don't think so. And the alien looks very, very stupid. I mean, at least in E.T., I mean, it had some real effort put into it. I mean, the puppeteers were really good with him. But this one, it's like something a college student did. It's not really good. And they couldn't even turn it a different color. It's sort of kind of that brownish color that E.T. is. But they just somehow turned them really ugly. Just, ugh. So, there's really not much I can say about this film because I haven't seen all of it. So, Mac and Me, he should make a review of it, and maybe I would understand the movie more if he did it. Number 10, Matilda. Oh yeah. He planned to do this review years ago, actually. I mean, I think maybe back in 2009 or 2010, but once he put it up on his next week's reviews or so, he got tons of complaints from people, just telling him, "Don't do it. If we don't do this, we won't watch you anymore." And so he got scared and he took it off. And I don't see it. I mean, I like Matilda, but this is his opinion, people, not yours. It is his show. Doug has ripped on some movies that I personally like Pokemon the first movie. And I definitely know it has its problems, but I still like it in the end, I guess because it has that nostalgia factor for me. And Matilda, I guess, in a way, is the same thing, but I can see why he doesn't really like Matilda that much. And I think he could make a really good review out of this, especially if he were able to get Mara Wilson with him. And I do know that the Nostalgia Chick has done something similar, but Doug might be able to go and mix it up a little and make it different. Matilda is just I read the book a few years ago, or actually several years ago, back in high school, and I really don't remember it that much, but I do remember it was a little bit different. I remember that the brother was nicer, and a few other things I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was sort of similar, but there were some differences. But the family and just everyone in general was a lot meaner. And I don't know if it was the director or just the writers or anybody else, but people were a lot meaner in this movie. And I don't know, maybe it was just try to get people to like Matilda more and relate to her, I guess, but it does kind of backfire right there. And I do think some of the people do play their parts pretty good. I mean, Mara Wilson, she was good in Mrs. Doubtfire, and she was also pretty good in this, but was it after this movie that she pretty much disappeared? I think she may have made an appearance in one more movie after Matilda, too. But after that, she pretty much decided that her acting career was done. I just would love to see a Matilda review for him like he always planned to do. I think he's since come out and said that he might do it at one point, but he hasn't got to it since. But I think people have gotten over it and they would like to see a review of it. So, Doug, just do a review of it. We're waiting for it. We want to see it. Review Matilda. Number 9. The Love Guru. This is another movie I know really little of, but I know people despise it. And just from the trailers I saw when it was coming out, I could tell it was horrible. Just the jokes, the plots, the characters, they all looked horrible. Absolutely horrible. And this was at a point when Mike Myers' career was just, it doesn't seem like it was going as good as it used to. I mean, at first he chose to be in The Cat in the Hat, and that movie was just awful. It was a complete disgrace to the real Cat in the Hat. I mean, The Grinch at least tried, but this movie, it was horrible. And a lot of people thought that was going to be pretty much, not the end of his career, but a big blow to it. And that he just couldn't get any worse than that. Boy, were we wrong. The Love Guru, it was pretty much the nail in the coffin for Mike Myers. It didn't end it completely, but it really, really, really hurt him. I really haven't seen him in anything since, except for maybe Shrek 3 and a couple other films, but he isn't like he was back in the early 2000s. And this film is definitely to blame for it. I don't see how he could have signed up for it. It was just a very stupid idea. This could just make a good review out of it, because Doug could just talk about how it hurt his career and just jab at how bad a movie it is. It isn't good. So, just like Mac and me, I really can't say much about it. I can just tell it's horrible. I mean, most movies you shouldn't really judge before you see them, but this is the kind of movie it's okay to judge before you see it, because it doesn't matter. You can tell it's bad. It doesn't matter at all. So, The Love Guru, it needs to be reviewed. It's bad. Number 8. The Rugrats Movie. The Rugrats were pretty much a staple for any kid back then. Whether it was the early 90s, the mid-90s, or late 90s, it was a staple for them. And it was a pretty good show. I think it originally ended in the mid-90s, but then came back and then it ended in the mid-2000s. But for a while, it was their most popular show. Even more popular than SpongeBob. And then that show took over, and just, it's pretty much all they freaking ever air now. And Rugrats was a pretty decent show, and I'm more of a fan of the older seasons, mostly the first, I think, 3 or 4, and then I guess the revival is maybe the first two seasons or so of the revival are okay, but I think after Dill gets introduced, it really started to go downhill. And it all started with the Rugrats movie. Now, the Rugrats movie isn't a bad movie. I like it, but it is the movie that introduced my least favorite character, and that's Dill. And he never shuts up. Every episode is just of him going like, wee, wee, wee. It's just, shut up, please, shut up. And it got annoying, really, really annoying. The old episodes always focused on all the babies and their little adventures, but it seems that after they switched to Dill, or after they got Dill, half of the episodes were about making him happy. It really ruined it. Some of the best old episodes of the Rugrats were when they only focused on one baby. Like, one good episode was actually when Tommy was in the grocery store and he ruined pretty much everything in there. There was very little dialogue in there because he pretty much didn't talk throughout the whole thing. In the later episodes, the little dialogue episodes became really rare. It was just kind of like at a baby's perspective of not even talking. It kind of had a more realism towards it. They became just really rare later on, and it was disappointing because everything had to be focused on Dill. They did lighten up on that by the time Kimmy came around, but it wasn't perfect. The Rugrats that we knew a long time ago were gone because they were soon after that the All Grown Up came and they just were never the same. It was pretty much time for the Rugrats to go at that point. The Rugrats movie, I think Doug could make a pretty good review on because it's something that he grew up with and it's something that most of us grew up with. So it's something that we could all relate to, and I think even he may be at least a little light on it because he did grow up with it. There are some funny scenes in there and I guess even some emotional scenes, but it's not really the greatest movie ever, but for what we got from Rugrats, it was pretty good. It was a lot better than Doug's first movie. That was just horrendous. And I've never seen it was a lot better than Hey Arnold too, and I've never seen the Wild Thornberrys movie, but I heard it was okay. Just, the Rugrats movie could make a really good review for the Nostalgia Critic, and I'm really surprised he hasn't done it yet. I think I once heard Rob say some kind of excuse of why they haven't done it yet, but I'm not really sure. But I think they should make a review out of it. It could be a really good one, and I would just love to see it. So, the Rugrats movie. Number 7. High School Musical! I remember when High School Musical first aired, and I actually recently rewatched it on the Disney re-showing all their 100 movies for their 100th original movie. And when I first saw it, I thought it was okay. It was your typical Disney original movie that aired on TV. I mean, it wasn't big or anything, but it was okay. I mean, what do we know about it? It wasn't going to get big or anything. Pretty much at the time, I think their biggest movie was probably Stuck in the Suburbs, and that got annoying for a while because it aired all the time. It got pretty annoying. And probably also Halloween Town. And I like Halloween Town. I think it's a pretty good movie. But High School Musical, I don't think anyone predicted it was going to get that big. Because for a while, it was everywhere. You couldn't escape it. It was just at every corner you looked at. It's like Frozen is today. And it came out around the same time as Hannah Montana and the Jonas Brothers. All three of these were pretty much popular, and It was horrendous. It was hard to get through. It was pretty much at that time when Disney Channel was just unwatchable. The only good show they had at the time was pretty much The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody and Phineas and Ferb. But even those really couldn't save Disney Channel at the time. They have gotten better since though, but it was bad. And then of course it led up to the sequels and Jesus Christ. I mean, I thought it was okay at first, and that was before it got really big. When it got huge, I started to hate the movie. It was just like, I hate these characters, I hate these songs, I hate everything about it. Get your head in the game, get your head in the game. It was just, ugh. These movies were just bad. And when I rewatched it more recently, I didn't really think it was that bad, actually, rewatching it again. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cheesy, it's stupid, but it's cheesy and stupid in a good way. But at the time, I found it funny that a lot of kids thought this was how high school was going to be like. I mean, I'm pretty sure they knew that we weren't going to be singing and dancing randomly, but I mean, they probably thought, I think, everything else was sort of true, even though everything else was not. High school was actually a lot different than this. And I'm pretty sure we had our shows that back in the day, like, we probably thought Kenan and Kel was going to be like high school, even though it was nothing like high school. But it was just hard to get through all this because it was just the biggest thing in the world for a while. And eventually it did die down, but at the time, it was just bad to get through. And they're going to make another one soon, and from what I heard, none of the original characters are going to appear. It's going to appear on a new generation of high schoolers, so maybe I'll check it out just to see it. I've seen the first two. I haven't seen the third one yet, but maybe I'll check it out at one point. This could make a pretty good review, I think. He's made a review of the third one for Disney December, and people have been asking a review of this for years, even before his cutoff date. I would love to see Doug suffer from this. Just to listen to all the songs and everything. He has to suffer from this. If we had to suffer for it, he has to. So, High School Musical. Number 6. Old versus New, Ghostbusters! I said in a video before that I'm not that big of a fan of Ghostbusters, but I can just tell that the new one isn't going to be good. It just looks bad. Everyone is saying it, and everyone who's defending it is just saying you're sexist if you don't like it. I think it's completely ridiculous, and Doug he needs to make a review out of this. I think he is going to at one point, no matter what, because it has Nostalgia Critic written all over it. Because the old Ghostbusters, it just I don't know how to put it because I'm not that much of a fan of it, but it had a way that it got its fans. It did something special. This new one isn't doing that. It's just trying to go and appeal to the nostalgia people and failing big time. I mean, a lot of movies are only getting made just because people are nostalgic for them and they might like to see them get reviewed or remade. And then when they do come out, they usually just don't do well. Sometimes they will, but they usually don't do well. There's nothing wrong with it being a female cast. It's just, it looks like terrible writing. It really does. There's no reason they should go be making a review of this. Because, why do I keep saying review? It's just, and you think they would have made Ghostbusters 3, but they just never got around to it. And by the time it looks like they were getting close to it, one of the actors dies, so that's gone forever. The only good thing that's coming out of this is that Ecto Cooler has come back. I haven't gotten it yet, but I do definitely need to get my hands on it. I think this could make a pretty good Nostalgia Critic review because he's a Ghostbusters fan, so he could handle the material pretty greatly, but because he's also a feminist, I'm not really sure if he would really be that harsh on it. He might be a little light, but I would still like to see him give it his all. So, an old versus new Ghostbusters. Number 5, the top 11 Gravity Falls episodes. I've actually been thinking of doing a video sort of similar to this because Gravity Falls was just such a great show. It's just, Disney didn't have that many good shows at the time, but this definitely got me interested in them again because it just had such a great story to it. Everything to it was great. And he's already done top 10 11 Avatar episodes, so I think this definitely has a really good chance at it. For me, it would be really hard to make it top 11 or top 12 or anything like that because there are just so many good episodes. Some people say, like Avatar, that there aren't any bad episodes of Gravity Falls. I mean, there are some that are better than others, but a lot of people like to say that there aren't any truly bad episodes, and they're kind of right. There isn't really that bad of an episode. Most people usually agree that the worst episode is probably either the Love God or something like that. And even that isn't really that bad. It still has actually some development in there. But it just would be really hard for me to make a top 10 or so for it. And I think it would be hard for Doug as well. And it could be also help to go and introduce more people to Gravity Falls. It's kind of like that. It has a ton of fans, but it deserves a lot more than it really does because it was moved from Disney to Disney XD, which really I think hurt it, and it deserves a lot more than it really does. I mean, it only lasted 2 seasons, and it's not really Disney's fault. I'll give them credit for that. The creator only wanted it to be 2 seasons, and you don't really see that much these days. Most people usually have their shows last for years on end just because it brings them money. But at least he ended his after only 2 seasons. This would just make a really good episode, and I think I would probably for the most part agree with him because just there aren't any bad episodes. I mean, I'm pretty sure there would be a few I would disagree with, but for the most part, I think everyone would just agree with him. So, a top 11 Gravity Falls episodes. Number 4, Alvin and the Chipmunks. I grew up with the 80s Chipmunks like many people did. They, in my opinion, were the best incarnation because their show was actually pretty darn good. It wasn't Academy Award or anything like that, but it was still a pretty good show because I remember getting up on school mornings and actually watching it. It was a pretty decent show, and it also had those little decent TV movies back in the 90s. Then they had this movie back in 2007, and this is one of the movies I kind of blame that started the whole nostalgia pop culture thing for trying to introduce new kids to. I mean, they did this with Alvin, they did it with Smurfs, and they did it with just a lot more. This film was just filled with nothing but pop culture references and just bad jokes and everything, and they ruined the characters. It's just they completely ruined the Chipmunks with this movie. And what astonishes me more is that they didn't have 1 sequel, they didn't have 2 sequels, they had 3 sequels with this right now. And who knows, they may get a fourth one at one point. It freaking amazes me that it's gotten this many sequels. And only because they freaking make money. I mean, every one of them has gotten bad reviews, but because they make a ton of money, they get sequel after sequel. Because kids always have to go and drag their parents to this. It's something that's hard to sit through if you're a fan of the original 80s show, because it's a complete disgrace to it. I think Doug can definitely make a good review out of this. He already made a one Alvin and Chipmunk review out of, I think, an 80s Chipmunk movie, and it was an okay review, but this can definitely be a lot better, because it's a disgrace to the Chipmunks, and he needs to review it. Just to go and give a smile on the original Chipmunks faces. This movie's just terrible. The Chipmunks Movie. Number 3. A Nickelodeon Month 2. So, Doug actually started the whole month thing in January with Nickelodeon Month, and it's definitely still one of my favorite of the January months, because it's always just fun to sit through those videos, even though I've seen them hundreds of times. And it's because I've just seen all those shows so many times. I mean, some of them I didn't really see, some of the more 80s shows I didn't see, but more to the late 80s and 90s shows, I definitely do remember. And I think a Nickelodeon Month 2 would probably be pretty interesting, just to go and look at the stuff he didn't grow up with, because he doesn't do his cutoff date anymore, so he can definitely go and do it for that reason, and because he reviewed Avatar. And there are a lot more shows he can review. He's really never said anything about SpongeBob before. I really don't know what his opinion is on it, so I would definitely like to see that. I would love to see his opinion on a show like Danny Phantom. That would just be... I would really love to see that, even if he hates it, because Danny Phantom was just a really awesome show. I would also like to see his opinion on more of the more modern sitcoms, like iCarly. And Nickelodeon Month 2 could just be really good to me, and he could also probably go and review the game shows like he never did. He was originally going to end it with the game shows, but he couldn't find any clips on YouTube, and this was back in the day when you really couldn't find as much on YouTube, but now there's just a ton of game show clips on YouTube, so he can definitely do it now. And I don't know how we could really end it this rough. Maybe again with the Rugrats movie, or with something entirely different, like maybe a old versus new with Charlotte's Web, because I believe the Charlotte's Web was I think it was Nickelodeon, or maybe Rango. A Nickelodeon Month 2 would just be really cool, and I would just love to see it, because I haven't hated any of the more recent Muff reviews, but they just haven't seemed as good as they used to, so I just really like to see this. It would be awesome. A Nickelodeon Month 2. Number 2. Cars 2. This movie is just... It never needed to be made. No one was asking for this. No one. I don't think even the Cars fans were asking for this. And I liked Cars. I thought it was a pretty good movie, but I didn't really know anyone who was asking for this. When it was coming out, I was trying to be open-minded about it. But when the first teaser came out, I just got really skeptical about it. It was pretty much just lightning and Mater, and then there were all these lasers, and then lightning or Mater says something, and it ended. It was just a horrible teaser, at least compared to pretty much their last few movies. And then the trailer came out, and that didn't help at all. So when I finally saw the movie, I was hoping maybe it would surprise me, but as I was watching it, I just got bored and almost fell asleep. I was just hoping it was fake. I was hoping that John Lasseter would come out and say, okay, we're joking. Here's a real movie. We're sorry. And the real movie would start. But that never happened. Cars 2 went on to become the most hated Pixar movie for a reason, because it just never needed to be made. No one wanted this. It just didn't have that same feeling that the other Pixar movies did. And this kind of put Pixar into its own little dark age for a while. I mean, Brave did okay. I mean, it wasn't spectacular, but it did okay. Monsters Inc. did a little better, but it was still just mostly okay. Finally, with the Inside Out, Pixar seemed to come back and make things really good again. That movie was spectacular. Then the dinosaur movie was, that was okay too. But Cars 2 was just horrendous. It was boring. And they're gonna make a third movie for whatever reason that's coming out next year. It just amazes me. I don't know why they had to go and turn this into a big franchise. And I just think this could make a really good review, because Doug hates both of the movies, so it would be fun to him to go and sit through this and just tear the movie apart. I'd even be fine if he did the first movie, but I think that the second movie would be a lot more fun because everyone hates that. I think even Cars fans hate it. I do know a few who like it, but for the most part, people just don't like it. So, just Cars 2, it's a bad movie. It needs to be reviewed by him, and I would just really love to see him tear it apart. And my number one most requested movie for the Nostalgia Critic to review is Home on the Range. This movie was pretty much the movie that made me drop Disney. It was the movie that made me give up hope on them, because just looking at it made me upset. I couldn't believe that this was the movie I was getting from one of my favorite studios. That just a few years before, they had Lilo and Stitch, or before that, they had Tarzan. I honestly couldn't believe it. It just saddened me. And then after that, they had movies like Chicken Little, and I guess it was an eachy bit better, but when I say eachy bit, I mean a very, very, very little eachy bit. This movie was just, it was made for 5-year-olds. I mean, most of their movies are supposed to be family movies, a movie that everyone can enjoy. But this movie was made for the little kids. Not anybody above the age of 7 or so can enjoy it. I was about 13 when this movie came out, so it really didn't appeal to me. And I was still one of the people who still liked cartoons even as a teenager, so I didn't really see anything wrong with going and seeing animated movies then. It was around this time that I was starting to get more into other companies like DreamWorks, because they had Shrek 2, and of course Shrek 2 was a phenomenal movie. And then Pixar is the one I really got into, and that was the help with the Incredibles. I did like Toy Story and all that, because I did of course see them, but the Incredibles is definitely what made me become a big Pixar fan, and just dropped Disney for a while. So I stayed with Pixar for years and years because they just seemed like the better company. And now it's more even with more of Disney kind of coming back and Pixar dropping, but it's pretty much tied now. This movie was just, it was hard to sit through. I couldn't believe that this was the movie I was getting from my favorite company. I found it hard to believe that that's just 10 years before that The Lion King came out, my favorite animated movie of all time. And then 10 years after this, The Home of the Range came out, Big Hero 6 came out. So it showed how much they've improved. This movie was just, I don't I can't even think of how it got through. I mean, I think I once read something that when it was in development, I think I once read one of the original stories for it, and it sounded a lot better. That might have been a dream, but I think I remember reading an original story for it that sounded so much better than it. And they could have maybe made a movie about three cows trying to save a farm good, but I still don't know about it. I mean, if they want to make a Wild West movie, they can't make it just appeal to 5-year-olds, because I mean, it's just, they can't do that. This movie was just, I really can't say anything more about it. It's what just made me say no more to Disney. This movie is probably what made Disney roll in his grave. He can't produce tears anymore, but I'm sure this movie made him cry, because I certainly would have cried too if I'd known that this is what came out of the company that I created. And what's worst of all is that this was going to be their last 2D film. Their last 2D film. This movie. And this is all they had to show for it. Not anything big and epic, but Home on the Range. It was just, it hurt. Luckily, they did, I guess, temporarily bring 2D back with The Princess and the Frog and Winnie the Pooh. I mean, I think it is still around. It's just, it's kind of on hiatus. They're only going to do it once in a while, but they have no more plans right now. I would love to see more planned in the future, but sadly, they don't have any more plans right now. This movie was just, it turned a lot of people off on Disney, and I think it did kind of help Disney wake up and just make them realize that they can't do any more of this ripping off of DreamWorks stuff. They went back to being themselves after this, thank God. I would just love to see a NC review out of this, because Doug hates it just about as much as I do, I think, out of his Disney Simba review. A lot of other people want to see this. It would just make a fantastic review. I mean, I would never probably stop watching this review if he got it right. So, Home on the Range, all I can say to you is that you're a horrible movie, you shouldn't exist, and you ruined Disney for me. Thanks a lot, Home on the Range. Thanks a lot. So, it's a horrible movie. I would love to see him review it. So there you have it. Those are my top 12 Nostalgia Critic reviews I want to see. And it was a lot more lengthy than I originally intended. I think this is over 40 minutes long, so I'm probably going to have to cut it in two, but I would just love to see all these in reviews. I think they would just make great Nostalgia Critic reviews, and they're just ones I really want to see. They would all make great ones. Just, some of them are good, some of them are negative, but I want to see all of them, and I hope to see them, at least a few of them, one day. So, if you've actually stuck around to the end, I'd like to say thank you for going and staying on this video, and wow, it was just hard to get through all these. But, do you have any NC reviews that you want to see that Nostalgia Critic review? If you do, go ahead and put them down. So, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a great day. Take care. Thanks for watching.